Adam Lerner, BrooklynPhotoWorks.com, and today we are back in the barn for episode 4 of The Machine. I'm here with my good buddy, Larry Milburn. Larry Milburn of Milburn Media Arts and RoadieFreeRadio.com. The Milburn Media Arts is also a .com. Check them out. Check him out. He's up to some really awesome stuff. For those of you guys that are just tuning in, this is a podcast and discussion where we talk about the machine. And what is the machine? The machine is basically the inner workings of the business, whether it be photography in my case or filmmaking in Larry's case. And we also, beside having filmmaking and photography and visual arts in common, we're also both musicians and huge music lovers. So a lot of musicology drips its way into our show.
Dribbling on in.
It dribbles right on in here. Yeah, we just kind of sprinkle a little bit of that special sauce because that's a language that we also have in common.
Yes.
So yeah, this week's episode, we got a lot of really fun stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about the importance of editing. We're going to talk about, you know what? I'm not even going to tell you what we're going to talk about. We're just going to talk about stuff.
It's an organic show.
Yeah. This week, we're going to start off the episode with an anecdote that Larry told me about the other day, and I had to stop him because it was so fascinating and so pertinent and so important because it's something that all of us experience as content creators when we're on the spot and the shit's going down. And you got to think, and you got to rely on your inner resources and your ability to keep calm and think outside the box. So why don't we start with that?
All right. So this was a real world experience, as you said.
Yep.
And basically, I had a shoot to do with a buddy. It was the last in a series of interviews that I was doing, and it was with my client himself. The previous interviews were done with other people that were going to be part of this video, right? And all those were shot 2 cameras, 2 5Ds. And this particular one, I was going to shoot 2 5Ds as well.
You're talking about the 5D Mark III.
I'm talking about the 5D Mark III. That's
okay.
Exactly what I'm talking about. But I only own one of those, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to borrow the other one. And I borrowed the other one. I went down to the shoot, and I get there, and we were in an office building in Westport, Connecticut.
Okay.
A loaner office to shoot this in. I wanted a particular look. And I start unpacking the gear. I get everything set up. And by the way, there's a time-lapse video of me setting up for this on my YouTube channel.
I actually watched it, and I thought it was pretty cool.
It's pretty fun. I mean, it's my first one like that.
You know, I think that the BTS stuff is awesome. I mean, look, even as somebody who does this stuff all the time, I love watching the BTS. I love watching how people set their shit up and place all the gear and place the lights, because it gives you ideas. And
Did you like that slamming music track?
Dude.
That was GarageBand. Boom.
Boom.
Created that in about 5 minutes.
I like that because it wasn't just this stale, static, dead air kind of thing with you moving around fast. It was actually
a little something
enjoyable.
Thank you.
You got it.
All right. So anyway, I get down, I get all my stuff out, and I'm getting things organized, and I grab the 5D that I've borrowed, and I open up the card side of it to put the card in, and I'm like, wait a minute, where's the slot? Where's the CF slot? Was the CF or the SD? I don't know. One of those two things. And I look at the camera, and it's the Mark II, which I'm not comfortable. I don't know that camera. I didn't start on that camera. I started on the Mark III. Right?
Oh boy.
Okay. So, and the video button's not right there. It's not laid out to what I'm used to. So,
and here you are. You're on the shoot. You've got everything set up. You're ready to go. You've got your client there.
He's sitting there.
He's
watching.
A limited amount of time.
And here's the thing. He's watching. I set him up on the laptop to watch in Premiere the previous stuff we shot.
Why would you ever do that?
So he could get in the vibe.
Oh, right.
Right? So he's watching.
You should have just poured him a glass of whiskey.
I know, right? He may have had one on the way. So he's watching that stuff. Like I said, both of those things were shot with 2 5Ds. So I've got a medium shot on a nice 50, my favorite 50.
And why don't you just, before we go, and I want to hear 2 things. Number one, tell everybody what a medium shot is.
Okay.
And tell them about the 50 and why you chose to shoot it with the 50.
All right, so the medium shot that I chose to shoot with the 50 was.
What is a medium shot? For those people that aren't.
So these guys were sitting. This medium shot, it's kind of waist up.
Okay.
They were sitting, so it's waist up.
So
you
differing
get
from a
nice-
close-up,
Differing from
a
a close-up
close-up is more of a head,
right.
and a medium is more like
Close up,
what
a
you're
tight
looking
shot.
at right here.
Right, this is kind of a medium shot, right? You can see we're waist up. You can see our hands moving. You see what's in the background.
Gotcha.
The background is not really blown out, but it's a little fuzzy.
There's
right?
information that
There's
helps tell
information.
the story.
Exactly. Oh my God, look at this guy. Yeah,
Wow.
right, exactly. So there's information that helps tell the story. And in this particular piece, these guys are video game designers. So behind all my talking head subjects,
Yep.
in the wide shot, you see other people designing video games.
So
and
that
working.
establishes the story.
This is where we are. Right. Now in the close-up, I
Right.
use a 70-200.
Nice.
Right?
That lens is
The
butter.
butter. It's the butter lens.
Butter.
And
Parquet.
it's really tight. I think on a couple people, I even cut parts of the tops of their heads off because I kind of like that real intimate
tight.
look.
Yeah.
And the important thing about these guys is that they are normal people. They are not, they're introverts. They're not used to being on camera. They sit in a dark room all day designing, right? And quality assuring.
These are not
video
front of
games.
house people is
These
what you're
are
saying.
Not fucking front of house people. Very sweet. But the great part about them, because they're real, and I know you love, shooting real people
Yeah.
as your subjects, there's no filter. You know?
Right.
And when they tell you a story or they give you a look or something, it's genuine.
Right.
And
So
it
they don't
comes out
have this whole like
organically.
elevator speech and all these canned responses.
No.
They're just genuinely on camera being themselves.
Exactly. And as we know, because we are visual storytellers, the eyes don't lie. You
Right.
know? And so when you get a lens like a 24-105 right up on somebody's face and you see the thoughts happening and the emotions coming out organically from their eyes, it's amazing.
I'm getting a little teary right now.
it's
just thinking
special
about it.
stuff, man.
No, I hear you.
So so that was the setup there, and I used I think one light, and then I had a little bit of natural light.
You mean
and then
one light you brought in?
I had one light I brought in, which was a reef of 55. I brought all three of my reefs. I have 55,
and that has an
a 44.
incandescent bulb.
Yeah.
Okay. Unlike this gorgeous Westcott Flex LED, which is doing such an incredible job lighting us up.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous.
and
it's
lightweight.
lightweight.
Yeah.
And portable.
So that's what I use for these guys, right? And so that's the wide and the tight shot.
Okay. So the wide shot is the 24-105. And
No, there's the 50. Wide shot's
sorry,
the
the
50.
50.
Yeah, wide shot's the 50.
the 50 Zeiss 50.
The Zeiss 50.
Zeiss 50.
Zeiss 50. I make Zeiss 50.
So nice. It's
And
nice.
that is a fucking beautiful lens.
Yeah,
I
it's
told you that was a lens. I think in the first episode
So
we
if the
talked about.
7200 is butter, then the 51.4 is like what? Is that like gelato or like?
Oh, it's like a nice gelato.
Like a nice
but
gelato.
Zeiss is German, right? It's
Yeah.
German, so it's more like Rosti.
Rosti.
It's the Rosti lens.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay,
All right.
we digress.
We
as
have
usual.
to digress. Well, the thing is that I don't want us to just run over the terminology without
Right.
imparting some information because, look, some of the people that are watching this or listening to this are filmmakers. Some of these people aren't or maybe interested in it. So
Yeah.
it's good to kind of give a little bit of background. And it also shares, we get some insight into your process and the decision making when you're going in to do an interview because people think like, I'm going to go do an interview. I need one camera.
Yeah,
Much more interesting with two camera angles, right?
much more interesting with two
Okay.
camera angles. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just digress even further. So I had never seen this place. Right, it's in
location.
Oregon. The location. I'd never seen the location. It's in Eugene, Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
My buddy, who's the client, we flew out there. I brought as much stuff as I thought I was going to need.
Right.
I knew it was going to be dark, but I envisioned the office completely different. I thought this dark area where they work was like a separate office area, but that we would have like nice conference rooms to shoot in, right? No, the whole fucking thing is dark. Like not a light on except for computer screens and like Christmas lights here and there.
So as a filmmaker and photographer, I have been in this exact place.
Yeah.
In that, you go into to do a location shoot, whether it's an environmental portrait or it's a piece
Doc,
like
video
you're doing,
doc,
whatever
yeah.
it may be. And you think, okay, terrific. I'm going to have window light. I'm going to have, decent room light, some ambient light to work with. And particularly for video, if you've got one light, you're going to light your subject. The rest of the room's going to go black practically. And that's a tough situation to be in because there's not a lot you can do to rectify that.
So I was nervous right off the bat because
Yeah.
I figured like, what the fuck am I going to do? Luckily, if I got people close enough, there was a window. in the one end of the room.
Yep.
Where if I got close, if I could borrow some of that ambient light,
Yep.
hit him with my Rifa, and then the rest would be this cool, studio of people working.
Wow. Sounds like a beautiful shot.
It's a nice shot. I can't show the whole video. I can get permission to possibly show some screenshots of
Well,
it
how about
so
some
we can
screen
see it.
grabs? If we
I
could
could
just lay
probably do
them
that.
on because that definitely helps to kind of,
Yeah.
illuminate this situation. Because I love the sound of it. I can kind of visualize it, but I would love to have a visual reference of it as well.
I'll definitely show you. So,
Great.
So yeah, that's what happened there, right? Then I come to Westport, Connecticut. We borrow this guy's office, completely opposite. Beautiful financial, services office, and like something out of Billions.
Nice.
Yeah.
Big,
and,
bright.
So I rolled down there with these two cameras, and I hosed myself because I broke a golden rule. I didn't check the gear before I went out.
Whoa. And we've talked about that.
I've been doing this a long time.
We talk about like packing the bag the night before,
Right?
double checking it before you roll out the next day.
But even guys like us still fuck up, and I did.
I
and
hear
so there
you, buddy.
I am. I didn't know quickly. And again, you're going against the clock, whether it's a
Right.
real clock or an internal clock or whatever it is.
And you've got the adrenaline going. You've got the client sitting
Yeah,
there.
there's-
It's not like the client was like off in a meeting and you were going to like just ping him when you needed him in there. The guy is sitting there.
He's sitting right there.
And
And
you
you can watch the video. In fact, I think in the time lapse, which is on my YouTube channel, Milburn Media Arts, Roadie Free Radio. If you go there and you watch the time lapse, I think you can see me on the far end of the table, fucking with the cameras, like, oh shit, this is not what I know how to use. And
You know
I
what
put
the
it
thing
away.
is though? I know I've been there before. I actually did a time lapse of a shoot that I did. I was shooting some cars, like some really cool exotic cars. And there was a situation where I had an issue with Capture One. I could not get Capture One to work, and I'm trying to tether, and it just literally was like one of those, clients there, time. And I ultimately ended up tethering to Lightroom, which I don't like doing, but it's gotten a lot better. It actually worked perfectly, folks. Okay, so that was another situation where I had to think outside the box.
Yeah.
But in the time lapse, you can see that there's like this dead air for a long time instead of all the rapid movement.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's part of what happens when you
Yeah.
go out to a shoot. You know, like as they say, the old expression, man plans and God laughs.
Right. And that's exactly it. So you got to go, right? At some point, you got to just I'm just going to put this thing away. I'm not even going to think about this anymore. I got one camera. I'm ready to roll. I've been here before. I know what I'm doing. It's going to be okay. I'm also an editor. We've talked about this, for photography. You know what you can do in post.
Yeah.
And what you can't do, more
Yeah.
importantly. So
You know your options when you're
you know
going
your
in.
options. So I knew that I got latitude, man. I'm shooting in high def. I can push in 30-40%, right?
And what do
And
you?
be okay.
Let's just talk about pushing in real quick.
All right, so I can blow up the image. I know I've got some latitude. It's a high def image, like I said. So
I think what you're saying is that you can crop into the image.
I can crop into the image.
So in other words,
Exactly.
instead of putting the full resolution video picture on the screen, you can crop into it, and that gives the illusion of a close-up.
Exactly.
Even though it's the same shot, it's the same information, but because the resolution that you're shooting at is so high,
Yep.
that it doesn't lose and it doesn't degrade in quality if you go 30 or 40%. Now, if you were going to go 50, 60, 80%,
You're going to start seeing some pixels.
right,
It
and
starts
you don't,
breaking
and
up.
you're not going to want that because it's not going to be professional.
That's
but
not
you
nice.
knew that you had this latitude, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I framed him. I don't even know if I brought the 50 with me for that. Actually, I did. I brought 3 lenses to the shoot in Westport.
Okay.
I brought the 50 because I was going to match. I brought the 24-105 as a just in case. Let's throw it in the bag.
Yep.
Thank God I did. And I brought the 70-200.
Right.
I didn't use a 50. I used a 24-105.
Yep.
For this particular shoot, I shot him a little bit tighter
Yeah.
than the other folks.
Yep.
And then I knew I had this latitude.
So what
And
about what focal length were you at? Do you recall if you had a range?
Maybe 60 to 70, somewhere in
Okay.
there.
So you could have done the 7200 at 70, but you knew that you wanted more latitude and you didn't want to lock
Yeah.
yourself in at 70 because you had nowhere to back off from.
Right. I didn't want to like blow the background out that much either.
That's true because the 70 is going to compress
gonna
on
be
the
different.
7200 much differently than
Yeah.
it's going to do on the 24-105. Look, I know the same thing. I go, when I do a shoot or even a video shoot, I have the 24-105 and the 7200 in the bag. And if I'm shooting around 70, I will do the same as you. I will make that choice whether it's going to be the 70 at 70 with the 24 to 105,
Yeah.
which is the far reach, or the close reach of 70 to 200 with the 7200, and it achieves a different look.
Totally. And this was super cool. So that's what I ended up doing. And because this client is also a friend, I've known him for 25 years.
Right.
And he was there on the other shoots, and he saw, because I'd have him check. I always ask my clients right before we're about to start. I frame everything up. I get it all lit up. I go sit in the seat and I say, please look in the viewfinder or the monitor. Are you okay with this look?
Right.
Right. So he knew from the last time, because he would also, because I was short staffed in Oregon, he was also timing the cameras, giving me a heads up when they were going to cut.
So he was basically your assistant.
He was my assistant.
So he was your subject and assistant. Well, look,
subject, assistant, client.
I have done that too, man.
Yeah.
I've had clients, when I'm shooting in multiple locations and I'm doing like editorial stuff, like when we go from one location, like they, without even asking, will just grab a light stand.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. So because nice. Once you get in the rhythm of it and you've got that rapport with somebody, it's like they want to help make the shoot as best as it can be.
Yeah. So I said to him, I sat in the chair. I said, okay, I have a shot. You like the shot? He was like, oh, this is great. I said, okay, look, just so you know, the other camera's broken. I made some shit up. And that one doesn't work. I know we had 2 cameras in Oregon, but in post, I can punch in. We know what that means now. I can crop in a little tighter, giving us that 2-camera look. He was like, great, totally trust you. Let's go.
Of course.
Right? That was it. What you don't want to do is freak out and take time to tell your client, oh my God, I don't have this other camera. I got all this shit going on. You have to give the illusion of the Zen and execute. And it totally turned out. But so just to let you guys know the process then in post, like Adam was saying. So I took the first clip, the wide shot, the main shot. I put that on the timeline. I work in Premiere, put that on the timeline.
Right.
I then duplicate the video layer.
Right.
And I move that duplicate up top.
Right.
Right. Then I double click. I select that top layer.
Yep.
And that's what I blow up. So when I'm watching back on the timeline, there are 2 layers. One is the close up and one is the wide shot.
Yep.
I can just make cuts on that top one and it'll cut back and forth.
So basically you can do multicam with one camera.
Multicam. Exactly.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah. It's good stuff. So anyway, that was...
Well, it's like the same thing like when you go into record like a record album.
Right.
It's like doubling guitars. You can literally just copy and paste another guitar track and lay it in on choruses or whatever it is just to kind of beef things up.
Yep.
But there's not another guitar track being played.
Right.
Right. So it's very cool.
So that was my real world experience to let you know that just because we have this super duper fancy podcast that we do every other week and we're pros,
right?
You know what? I still fuck up all the time.
Yeah, but the thing is this, is that what I always say is that if there isn't a solution, there's always a workaround. And the thing is that when you're on set, when you're there with the client, when the clock is ticking, the last thing you want to do is show your client that you're stressed, because that stress, that negative energy is going to translate. It's going to be absorbed by them. Your client might have a little bit of anxiety because they're the ones that are going to be on camera. And like you said, these are not necessarily people that are always on camera. So the last thing you want to do is to impart any kind of stress on them. Yeah. And what you did was the right thing. You were able to basically slow things down. And I think this is the thing that people often forget to do, is to slow down. When your mind is racing, when you're thinking like, oh shit, everything's crashing down right now, and the moment of truth is happening right now, instead of freaking out, is the ability, like you said, to get zen, to ground yourself and think to yourself, okay, Larry, okay, Adam, whatever it is, there's another way I can do this. And you were able to pull it out and obviously produce a really, really good product. Yeah.
Well, you're right. I'll get you some screenshots so everybody can see what some of these things look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. And it's amazing that these cameras, these 5Ds, and now even there's the Mark IV, which has even more resolution, or 4K or whatever that shit is.
Yep.
Right. Exactly. You've got like insane resolution. So, look, cropping in photography, some people think it's a huge no-no, but in filmmaking, it's obviously a godsend. And for storytelling,
I mean, and that is a transition to the other thing we were talking about, right? Where I had someone on the podcast recently, a documentary filmmaker friend of mine,
right?
And we were talking about editing, and he had taught a class with this woman who called him after the class. It was like a week-long class. She called him after class and said, "You didn't teach us about editing." And he was like, what are you talking about? She said, you didn't teach us how to edit. He said, you just spent a week in the class. You cut your own thing. She said, no. You didn't tell us when to use the wide shot, when to go to a close-up, right? Things like that. And he's like, well, I don't know. He's like, I've been editing 30 years. I don't know when to do those things. I try it. I see what emotionally speaks to me as I'm creating the cut.
Right. And I think that this is the
same thing, right?
Okay,
Is kind of you're saying, sorry, about like, cropping maybe being a no-no in photography and whatnot, but you got to try it out and see what happens emotionally, what your response is to it, because that might be the happy accident. Like you said, when we were talking about this, just moving the light away in a different spot or whatever it is. Yeah. You might look back and go, holy shit, that's an awesome photo.
Well, I think fundamentally there's, and I completely agree with that. That's a great point. I think fundamentally one of the things about filmmaking is that you shoot for the edit. This is something that I've really come to learn, as I continue to dabble in more, editing. I've done some work with Larry, on some of your films as well, and really gotten to really understand and appreciate your process on a much deeper level. Is that when you're doing filmmaking, you're shooting for the edit. So that means that as a filmmaker, you're gathering just hours of footage. I mean, you were telling us about that 16 millimeter film that you shot. You shot
the roadie, the short film.
Roadie, the roadie film that you actually shot on film, and you said that you shot like a 35 millimeter film, and you shot something like 5 days worth of film for a 15-minute film. And that's the whole thing, is because you are shooting for the edit. And in filmmaking, you need the footage because you need the nuances, you need B-roll, you need a lot of different things that are going to be contributing to storytelling, which, in photography, it's different. In photography, you're basically trying to fill the frame with that story. Yep. And in editing, sometimes, like you said, you do have to crop. I mean, look, when I've got the camera up to my face and I'm shooting, like, let's say an environmental portrait, and I'm trying to tell a story, I am literally looking, my eyes are scanning every corner of the image. I'm trying to see what's behind my subject, in front of my subject, so that there's a story there, that it's clean, that is cohesive. But there's definitely times when you get back and you have a multitude of different photos, and then you think like, okay, this one, it might have this light fixture in it, and the light fixture doesn't look great, but the subject looks great, and the story's being told, and sometimes you just got to crop that shit out. Right. And that's fine. Now, in photography, the more you crop, the less resolution you have. Right. So if I shoot like full frame, and I've got like this beautiful full frame image, when I start cropping, I am losing pixels. I am losing information. That is shit that you can't get back. You cannot up-res a photograph well and be able to kind of have a high-res image. So, for example, if I was, let's say, shooting something that was going to be printed, like a huge, humongous print or a billboard for some crazy reason, that is the shit that you are not cropping. Right. Because you start cutting information away, and then you put that, you blow that thing up huge, it's going to be very, it's going to have noise. It's going to be pixelated because it's not going to be full resolution. Just as if you crop in or punch in too tight, it's going to be noisy. It's not going to be clean, and we want to have clean images. Yep. Absolutely. So it's interesting how there are parallels, but fundamentally for you, it's like you've got to capture a lot of information to tell your story. Yeah, I mean, just as a reference, right? I did 5 interviews in Oregon. Yep. And then this interview, so 6 interviews total. And each interview was probably 30 to 40 minutes. Wow. For what ultimately became a 5-minute piece. Right. Where these people are just talking in sound bites. I know. Right? It's just like, one whole section with 3 different people is 30 seconds long. Right. So you can imagine how much is left over, but you have to get that much. I recently got a call from a local organization that wants to do a video, and they're like, oh, we want to make a 30-minute documentary on somebody. They have any idea how much footage that's going to be and how long that project will take? They didn't. Right. And I know because they lowballed me on what they thought the number would be. And I said, well, A, you've got to double your budget, first of all. Second of all, you need at least a 1-to-2 ratio. Right. At least that to have, you got to have at least enough for an hour-long piece to really get down, and then you have to have a lot of supporting B-roll to cover that. Right. And I think that this is the thing, is that clients, like I get called all the time. Like I had a client that said, that wanted some shots at some, it was a friend of a friend who wanted another friend who's a dentist. They needed some photos done, and they wanted it done at at I think a dentist office or something, whatever. And they're like, oh yeah, it's not a big deal. Just come in and spend an hour in, one afternoon. And people don't realize that like that's not how we work. We don't walk in there, just go and then leave. There's a lot more involved in doing this kind of stuff, but people don't understand the process. And look, it's our job to inform. It's our job to make a client comfortable, but you also don't want to be a dick. You don't want to be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. So it's that fine balance of trying to just, instill the confidence in the client to let them know, look, in order to achieve the result that you want, it's going to take us a little bit more time. But what I will do is I'll put a proposal together for you and you'll be able to see all the different moving parts, and then we can go from there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's really fascinating, and I think that there's a lot to be learned about the business end of this, because when you're shooting for the edit, you have to impart that in your client, and the same thing is true for me. Like when I do the fashion stuff, like and I'm doing lookbook stuff, I shoot thousands of frames in a day. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then the art director is going to choose like 12 images. But that's the thing, because they need to have all this to choose from.
Yep.
And they need to have the right one. And it's hard to just be able to tell the model to do exactly what you want, because there's such a rhythm and there's a flow. Right. So I get that. All right, look, we have... We basically took up half the show with one topic, but it's a multitude of topics, and I think that it's pretty fascinating, and it's great that you were able to overcome that and still deliver the quality product to your client.
And I think also, like I said, you're always learning and you're always trying to figure it out.
Absolutely.
And no matter how long you've been in this, something's going to go wrong.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So
again, if there isn't a solution, there's always a workaround. Slow it down, get zen in your head. And, you'll come up with something.
Yeah. Take a deep breath. Say, I got this.
Yeah.
And do it.
There you go.
All right.
Well, you know what? This also could, this also talks about, I don't know. Do we want to go into editing? We could go into editing, editing your photos, editing your. Well, let's just talk about that really quick. There's a lot of photography out there where people do fantastic work, and, the photos look great, but they don't necessarily know how to edit their photos. And I think a lot of budding photographers, they make the photos, but then they're scared of getting into Lightroom, or they're scared of going in there and making the edits, or they don't really know what to do. And there's all these sliders and all these different options, and they look online, they see other people's work, and they try to emulate it, and then they grab Visco filters and things of that sort. And editing is so important. In fact, like you said, in film, the same thing is true in photography. Like whatever shoot that I'm doing, I am shooting for the edit to some degree, in that I know that, number one, I want the cleanest images possible. So what does that mean? I don't want my images to be noisy. I definitely don't want them out of focus, because they're out of there. I don't want extraneous things in the background. I don't want things that have huge blown out highlights or that are too dark. So there's a lot of different decisions that I'm making when I'm capturing the images, so that I know that it's going to make the editing process more streamlined. Then at the same time, I'm also thinking about what I'm going to be delivering. Now, some clients, they're like, look, I want this on a white background, and we're going to actually be siloing this out, meaning they're actually cutting the image out of the background and putting it on another background. So then I know that background has to be as clean as possible, because we don't want to have edges that are going to be very hard to reconcile in post. I know that sometimes I want an image to be really warm, and I want it to be balanced. So that what that means is that if I'm shooting an environmental portrait and there's like really nice kind of amber lights and like the skin tones, I want the skin tones to kind of match that kind of look. Yep. I don't want some like bright situation, from a window light in the background. Like literally, I will go and, like, if I have to hang a sweatshirt over a window. Yeah. In order to balance out the ambient light. So editing is so critical, and I don't want people to be scared of editing. In fact, I have a ton of Lightroom videos on my website where we start the very basic stuff, where we go in and we do things from like just importing your images and basics of editing and editing portraits and just being comfortable with it. And there is no right and wrong, okay? When you're shooting raw, okay, people, you have to be shooting raw. We've talked about this. You shoot a JPEG, it's like shooting digital photos. that you take down to the Walmart and you have 4x6 prints made, and that is your only reference, and that's all you can ever use with it because it's done. Okay, you can't edit it, you can't blow it up,
Right.
you can't do anything with it. You gotta shoot raw. And what that means is that when you take a raw image from your camera and you put it into Lightroom, when you make those edits are non-destructive. What does that mean? Well, that means that the raw file is not changed. So all of the edits that you're applying, all of the things that you're doing are happening in a virtual way. And the cool thing about that is that, let's say, for example, I do a shoot today. And I take a bunch of portraits of Larry and I edit them. I can go back tomorrow, edit them a completely different way. I can go back. I can go 3 years from now back to those images and I can edit them again as the software changes, as the raw processing changes, as there's more information that I can grab from that photo. I can continually edit it. So don't be afraid of editing. Because editing will definitely help tell your story. It'll help sell your work. It'll give you that kind of edge. It'll make your images pop. It'll make them, whatever.
Yep. Yeah. I fully agree. You got to just jump in and try it. Yeah. And again, with the learning, I'm learning new shit all the time. I just watched a video through cinecom.net. They have a YouTube channel. A lot of instructional stuff, a lot of Premiere Pro stuff. I just watched a video on color grading to get that cinematic look.
Yeah.
And I'm not a colorist. All right. I don't say if I pride myself, but like I cut for story and then I ship it off for someone else to color it.
Right.
But the way the world is going, I got to know how to do some coloring.
I'm with you, man.
I got to do that shit. I know the audio side, but I got to learn the coloring. So anyway, I started watching some more videos about this. And this was a great little tutorial video.
Yep.
Done right within Premiere. And that I learned several new things. Like, all right, I just got to get in there and start fucking around.
Look, I'm the same way. I am not a retoucher. I didn't go to school to learn how to retouch images, and thank God for YouTube and the internet. I've learned a ton of stuff, and I've been able to apply a lot of those principles and be able to, because look, I do a lot of my work in Lightroom, but when it comes to really finessing portraits, I take those images into Photoshop because I really have much greater latitude and whatever. I have a lot greater latitude in Photoshop to be able to, get the kind of look that I want. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move on here.
Here we go.
This week, I was, on the internets. And I was on all of them. And
all of the internets?
Every one of them. And let me just get into my iPad here. And I came across this Kickstarter for this thing called Labbox. Oh. And this is something that I'm so excited about, guys. The Labbox is basically, they're calling it the first multi-format daylight loading film tank, which is crazy. Now, what does that mean? Okay, it means that you can literally take a roll of film, and they are offering it in two different options, one for 35 millimeter film and one for 120, which is medium format film. And you can load that film into this box. You don't have to go into a darkroom. You don't have to go into a closet. You don't have to put it in a bag, like we did in the old days.
Yeah.
You put it in this box, and you can add the developing solution and the fixer, and basically you can develop your own film anywhere.
What?
All you got to do is carry this little box and a little thing of fixer. In fact, they even have, I think, their own version of their own fixer chemicals and stuff, and a little,
for like an extra $75.
No,
it's a 12-ounce bottle.
It's actually pretty affordable. Look, these chemicals are not that expensive. But the cool thing about this is that you can either buy the 35 millimeter one or the 121, or you can buy it with both options. So the thing about this thing is that what that means is that, let's say I went back to Cuba. And I wanted to shoot all film there, but I wanted to have the film available to me, or whatever, wherever I might be.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to wait to have to come back. And
Who wants to wait?
Who wants to wait? I mean, literally, I could sit at a freaking cafe,
right,
order a cappuccino,
a nice
cafe con leche
with your lab box.
I could offer, order cafe con leche because we are in Cuba.
And your Cuba sandwich,
cubano,
your pork sandwich,
puerco, jambon. God, please forgive us, guys.
Wow.
Not Spanish speakers.
Wow.
All right. But the thing is about that is that I can literally, develop my own film anywhere.
Right. You're like a walking Polaroid machine.
No, not necessarily, because I'm not making prints. Okay, I mean, there's a fundamental difference over here. I'm just basically developing the actual film, the emulsion,
Right.
which I think is pretty cool. I mean, look, regardless of where this is not a messy thing. This is not something like in the past, like years ago when I had like a dark room at home, like I had to sacrifice one of my bathrooms,
Right.
because you needed the running water, you needed to have the little red light, you needed it to be dark. I mean, like
You
literally,
gotta
like,
have the red light. It kind of makes it.
well, yeah, because it doesn't, it doesn't have the UV rays
special.
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
And it smells good. I used to love working in the dark room.
Yeah?
I took a photo class in high school.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, used to love spending hours down
Oh,
there.
me too. I would spend
Right?
hours in there, just put on my
Fucking
tunes
bet.
and just
Yeah,
hang out.
Exactly.
All
All right, so I threw you off. All right,
Yeah.
so this thing's cool.
So yeah, look, guys. I mean, look, I just think that analog is cool. I mean, like I just bought a record player. I haven't fired up my records in ages. They've been like literally. I've moved from house to house.
Analog is cool. I just bought a record player. Who are you?
I'm just that dude. I mean, look, I grew up listening to vinyl. The first record I bought was
That's
the
fucking
first
awesome.
music I ever bought was on vinyl.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And then,
I got a record player.
I've carried these freaking albums around from like they've traveled thousands of miles, and then for the last 15 years, 20 years they've been sitting just gathering dust. So
We're
I've,
gonna get a record brush. You said.
I am because
Did you order it?
Not yet, no. But my point being, is that you guys know that I love shooting film. You guys know that I love the look of film.
It's cool.
And now with the lab box, I could basically process my own film and then just scan the negatives up and be done. I mean, now, is this going to be of the same quality?
You're like Walgreens in a box.
Holy shit, man. Cut me some slack.
And depending, they've got the Walgreens version or the CVS version.
Wow.
Right?
Wow. Yeah. Well, it is kind of like 1 hour photo.
That's what I'm saying.
I think the point that I'm trying to make here, guys, is that it's cool to see that there's a response to the need for film. Like we talked about how Ektachrome is back.
Yes.
Agfa is still making some really, or Ilford is still making some really amazing film as well. So it's nice to see that film is not dead and that consumers and professionals alike, but anybody is going to have the ability to process their own film, which is fun. It's actually
cool.
pretty fun.
It's very cool.
Yeah,
Did they tell you what this thing's going to retail for?
Let me just
Did they know that yet?
Let me see. Okay. I mean, look, there's different tiers, obviously. So if you just get the monobath film bundle, which is the lab box with one module, that means you've either getting the 35 or the 120, and they actually throw some monobath and some film in there. You know what? It's going to be €100 and up, 110 euros and up, depending on how much.
It's not a couple $100.
Yeah, it'd be like 100 and change, whatever. I don't know. It looks really cool. I mean, it's really.
So how do they find this thing?
Oh, they just go to Kickstarter.
Kickstarter Lab Box.
Lab Dash Box.
Lab Dash Box.
I think that this thing is getting so much attention. I mean, let's just see how the funding is going on this thing. All right. They, I think that they were originally looking for 70,000, and they're up to almost $500,000.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So that's fucking crazy.
That's fantastic.
But what that tells you is that that there's still a huge following for film, and that there's a lot of hobbyists and professionals out there that still look. I get people sending me websites all the time. If you guys want to submit your website for a portfolio review, there's a link in the bottom in the show notes that we have below us. But I get submissions all the time, and there's more often than not, particularly with the younger set of photographers, there's photographers that are shooting a mix of film and digital. And then I'm getting a lot of websites with photographers that are shooting all film. And I love that. I think it's so cool. And how about the ability now for these guys to not have to think like, I got to take all my film, I got to send it out. Hopefully it makes it somewhere.
Right.
Now they can just do the processing at home.
I think that's awesome.
Or they could do it at the coffee shop.
It's like why people still collect, 16 millimeter Bolex cameras to shoot film on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Well, as long as
home
film
movies on.
is still being produced,
Yep.
and there's still a way to process the film, then it's not going to die.
And we talked about it before. It's another tool.
It is.
Just look at it as another tool in your bag.
For storytelling, for whatever
That's
it may
very
be.
cool. Good for them, man. They still have 24 days to go. Holy shit.
24 days to go, and they're already at $500,000.
Wow.
Which is
That's a lot of boxes.
Well, it just means that that people believe in this product. I mean, look, I watched the video, and I'm impressed.
You're hooked. Did you pledge?
I have not yet pledged, but I think I might just jump into this.
You should.
Look, it's like I got a lot of hobbies, I got a lot of things going on here, but I wouldn't mind checking this shit out. What that also brings me to is light meters.
Ah.
Why am I talking about a light meter? Your camera, if you're using a 5D Mark III,
yes,
or virtually any, even a consumer DSLR, Fuji, whatever it is, all these cameras have a little light meter built in there. That thing where you like push the shutter halfway down and you see that little scale and it shows you like, hey, I'm overexposed. Hey, I'm underexposed. Hey, I'm spot on. Why would you ever want a light meter? Well, the light meters are fantastic for two things, I think. Number one, if you're doing studio photography. So oftentimes when you're doing studio photography, you are completely creating artificial light from zero light. So that means that you are going to completely crush all the ambient. You're shooting in a situation where you are not letting the ambient light influence you whatsoever. So you're not taking a reading of the room, of your subject. In that context, you're taking a reading of how you are lighting things. That means that you're popping your flashes and then you're reading the light meter in order to get your exposure. In that kind of a situation, it's great because let's say you're shooting like product or something like that where you need to be at f11 or f16. You're shooting f16 indoors in a studio space. Zero light's going to be penetrating through that thing.
Right.
So therefore you're going to need a light meter so you can set the light meter, set it to your aperture, you're going to set it to your ISO, and then it's basically going to give you an indication of what you need to set your lights to so that you can get a proper exposure. Now, just because you get a proper exposure doesn't mean it's the be-all, end-all, because there's other influencing factors if you're reflecting light off of different things, depending on how reflective your object is. But that will at least give you a very, very good idea and an excellent idea. The other times when you want to use a light meter is when you're shooting film, because a lot of the older film cameras, like I have old manual film cameras like my Rolleiflex.
Yeah.
That has no light meter in it.
They ain't telling you nothing.
Not a thing. So if I'm shooting like, ISO 100 film and I know that I've only got so much latitude on my aperture, I've got so much latitude on my shutter speed.
Yep.
So I can guess. And, like if I'm outdoors in the middle of the day, I can probably come up with a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be shooting at. I can use the light meter app on the iPhone, which is actually pretty good, guys. It's really not so bad. Now,
who makes that? What is that?
I don't know. I think it's just called Light Meter. If you just go to the App Store, Light Meter, it's free. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've used it. I don't really make a practice of using it.
Now, are we talking about the old light meter where like you hold it in front of someone's face, you do the click, and it gives you a reading? Talking about one of those. Okay. See, I've always thought that I should get one of those and have that in my bag.
You should.
Use for me.
I keep one in my bag for every shoot that I go on.
Yeah, I should invest in
And
that.
I've got like an old Sekonic, like a real kind of basic one. Now they're like fully digital. They're wireless. Like you literally can like pop your strobes with them. I mean, you can go beyond.
Yeah.
But you don't need to go that crazy.
No,
a basic light meter is going to be able to do the trick for you. But again, for shooting film, that's the thing. Film, it's expensive.
Now, Adam, I'm going to cut you off here,
Please
buddy.
do.
If you have a light meter in your camera, do you need an external light meter?
Well, that's the thing, because oftentimes in your camera will do what's called evaluative. Your light meter will do an evaluative reading. That means it's going to take all of the light that's coming in through the lens. And it's going to basically give you an evaluation and an average based on all that light. So let's say I was taking a portrait of you outdoors in the shade, but behind you, it was like completely blown out bright. It's going to take all those things into account. And I'm probably not going to get a good reading on you because it's going to flatten out the image because it
doesn't separate.
It wants to go gray.
Yeah.
So to get a proper image on you, I would have to take a reading from your face. If that's what I'm trying to get in there, to be able to not have the influence. Now, you can do spot metering with your camera. I don't even know how we got into this whole metering thing, but metering is very cool. Spot metering is cool because then you can actually meter just when you set the focus point on the face. It'll give you a much more accurate reading on this than what's going on in the background. And I think that the difference between spot metering and evaluative metering is really important when you're shooting outside or in environments that have, different types of ambient light that are going to influence your exposure. A light meter is definitely going to help mitigate that because it's going to give you a much more accurate reading exactly where you want the camera to be, taking the, where your focal point is of the shot. And the same thing is going to be true, even if you have like an old film camera with a light meter, I still think that having an actual light meter is a great thing to have in your tool bag.
Yeah. It seems like an extra little backup for yourself too. Just an extra little reference point.
Well, it certainly is going to give you peace of mind, particularly if you're new to shooting film and you're new to shooting with a fully manual camera. Look, there's other tricks that you can do. You can obviously download the app with your phone, and that's going to give you probably an approximation. You can bring your DSLR with you, and you can use your DSLR's light meter. So, or you can use your DSLR to meter. And again, you can go from evaluative to spot metering if you really want to hone in, depending on the kind of balance of light that you have. But I get asked this all the time because oftentimes, like I will, excuse me, I'll do portraits outside, and I'll do the crushing of ambient light, which I love doing. And I'm not sitting there using a light meter because I'm doing it to flavor, and I also kind of have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to be doing. So I'm not saying I know everything about light and how to do light, but I kind of have a pretty good idea of what the results I'm going to get before I get them.
You've played with it a lot.
Exactly.
So you kind of know. Yeah.
But to answer people's questions, because they've asked them in my YouTube, yes, a light meter is important. Yes, a light meter would certainly help. Yes, a light meter certainly could take out some guesswork. But oftentimes, even if a light meter is giving you a certain reading, you certainly can play with your settings to get a certain flavor. Just like you might change things around to get more of an emotional element or something that helps with storytelling, whether you change the light, like you said, you opened up that window, you had light that was casting into the room, that helped tell that story. Now, would a light meter have done that for you? Maybe for your subject, but for the other part of it, so you were able to balance your exposure, but you knew how to do that through experience. Okay.
Exactly.
So there you go, guys. So for any of you guys who are wondering about a light meter, I think a light meter is a great thing.
Any types, any brands that you recommend?
I mean, like I have no sponsorship with any light meter companies, but I do feel that Sekonic has always made a solid product. It seems like the industry standard. Every photo studio that I go into, if you grab a light meter from the EQ room, it's always a Sekonic.
Cool.
So to me, like it's like the pocket wizard, of light meters. It's like it just works.
Yeah.
And they're kind of ubiquitous.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
There we go. So we got the lab box out of the way. We talked about light meters. We talked about why editing is so important. Oh, let me just talk about one other thing, guys. Model release. What is a model release?
When you let a model that you build go out into the world?
Exactly.
Okay.
In the photo and film realm, a model release is basically a document that you have your subject sign, which gives you permission to utilize their likeness or their image or their footage in different situations. It basically gives you, what would you say? It releases them of any kind of legal
ownership or anything like that. And I will just stop you right there, Adam. God damn it, because it is not just for photo or video, but for even podcasting. Do you know that I use a release? I ask for a release at the start of every interview I do for Ready for Radio.
That's perfect.
Yeah, because, people could come back. That's why the email chain is also very important.
Right.
Because let's say you forgot to get a release from somebody, but you had been emailing with them about the time and this is what we're going to do and all that kind of stuff. And let's say a year later they circle back like, I never got a release, blah, 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 blah. I want to do this and this. Well, okay, shit. You go, I didn't get a release. Damn it. What can I do?
So let's be more specific.
An email
let's be more specific about that.
Okay.
Give me an example of why you want to, of a situation where you would wanted to have a model release.
Well, you need their permission to use their image and whatnot, right? And by doing the release, they're handing that over to you, basically, and trusting you to do with the image or the audio recording, whatever it is, what you're going to do with
Well,
it.
the whole point is that if you were to take somebody's picture, or you were to shoot footage of them, or you were to capture audio of them, and you did not get a release, or you did not have anything in writing that would contractually, was binding, then they could potentially come back and say, nope. They could sue you.
Yes.
They could cease and desist. They could basically shut you down.
Yes.
Now, a model release sounds, like something that's a little bit daunting. Okay.
Not at all.
No, there is an app for that. There are multiple apps for that. So guys, just go again to the App Store. I believe there's an app. I think it's even just called Model Release, and it's got some standard information. I think you can modify the information to some degree. You can also, like I know for the one that I use, you can take a picture of the person. It's got all the different stuff in there, all the terms, and then they literally can sign it with their finger. And then when it's done, you basically, an email of that PDF model release goes to them and goes to me. And that way
that's nice.
Yeah, and I take that PDF and I put it on file, in their file.
Yep.
And then they've got that as well as document knowing that the release has been done, so they know that I'm not taking advantage, I'm not using their information out of context.
It's funny. I'm still old school. I'll still write one up. Like if I have a shoot, I'll write it up. Or I'll sort of rejigger one that I've been using and put in language specific, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And have them sign it there. But for filmmakers, you can also get around the writing of it by just asking right on camera. And a lot of times I'll do that as well.
Sure.
Before an interview starts, and I do that
They give
every
a verbal
time.
commitment.
I say, and particularly on the podcast, I'll ask my guest,
Right.
do you, such and such a person, give me permission to use this interview for the show Roadie Free Radio, however I want to use it. That's pretty much what I say.
Yeah.
And obviously everyone's like, yeah, no problem, whatever you want to do.
Absolutely.
And I actually had an author, Howard Massey, I'll put his name out there, who wrote the book Roadie, a novel. He was on the show. He thanked me when we got done. When he said, yes, I give you permission, I started to go on to the next thing I was going to do. And he said, you know what? I want to thank you for doing that. I kind of chuckled. He's like, no, you don't understand. People just sort of take for granted that they can use whatever people do, however they want to do it.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, you can't take for granted that just because I do a portrait with you, you might not want me putting your image on social media. You might not want me using that for stock photography or for something that actually is profitable. Now, typically, if I'm doing like, personal shoot or creative shoot, I'm not shooting for stock. I'm not shooting it to sell it. But if I were, I would definitely get a model release, and that would at least indemnify me and give me permission to be able to utilize that image in any way I see fit.
Yeah.
Without and trying to go back after the fact, that could be nearly impossible.
Fucking terrible. And when you're shooting video, you also just have to keep in mind who's in your background.
Oh, that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
Right. A video.
So the other thing you keep in mind when you're shooting video with the releases, it's not just about the person who's on camera. It's not just about your subject. If someone walks by the frame, and you've gotten your subject's release, right?
Yeah.
And someone else is kind of featured in the frame by accident, and then you try to use stock image and they see that thing.
You can't do it.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and you're also not going to, you might not have the budget to like blur them or pixelate them out, because that's a post thing that, adds expense.
A pain in the ass. Yeah. So a lot of times you'll see a producer, an associate producer, they sort of stand off to the side. They got their clipboard or their iPad now, and they wait for an interview to get done or something, and they approach the person and say,
hey, every time I'm on a shoot for Discovery, everybody that's in, it's everybody literally, there's like what do you call them? Like one of those production,
like a PA.
Yeah. Running around like getting everybody to sign the release. And there's also signs up that say like, by entering this area, you are agreeing, blah, blah, blah. So it's like, basically, it's posted.
Yeah.
So that that if you walk past this line, you've agreed to do it.
Yeah.
Now, there's gray area, but whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's ways around it.
Yeah, there's definitely ways around it. So, so model release, guys, don't forget, get a model release if it's something you think you might want to use commercially, especially if it's something you might want to use commercially, and don't get hung up on it. Just go to the App Store. I'm sure there's one for Android. At least I think so. I know that there's plenty for Apple.
Just Google like film releases.
Well, the nice thing about the app on the phone is literally like they sign it with their finger and PDF goes to 2 different parties. That sounds awesome.
Done. But for whatever reason, if you can't do that, just
you could even write one up if you had to.
No, that's what I'm saying.
You want it actually committed. Yeah. You want them to sign off on that. All right,
do it.
Very cool. You guys know how much I love Think Tank bags.
You've converted me to a Think Tank bag.
Well, you actually look like one. Larry actually borrowed my Think Tank Production Manager 40 for a gig. He borrowed the Production Manager 50, which my wife calls the coffin because you could literally fit a human in. I
found someone in the bag when you dropped it off.
Talk
about checking my gear.
There was tell you something.
There's a little guy in there. No, I and I'm not sponsored by Think Tank yet.
I'm not sponsored by Think Tank.
But you have a special love. You have a love relationship with them.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of old school in that I have 3. How many I got 3 Pelican cases.
We're not talking about another brand right here.
We're talking about another brand. I love my Pelican cases, but you let me borrow the Think Tank Production Manager 40 for 40 inches of love. And that's actually what I brought. That's what I brought to Oregon.
Yeah.
And I would like to go in a corner and just hug my Think Tank.
Wow.
Your Think Tank. Because I got 2 tripods, all my lights, all light stands, a boom stand, grip equipment, and a few other gizmos in that bag.
No, it's amazing.
And it was awesome.
Well, look, I love the Think Tank bags. I mean, my first Think Tank bag ever that I think I bought like 9 years ago was a Streetwalker hard drive, which is the backpack where you can fit a shit ton of gear in. And you can also slide a laptop in the back, which is really nice. So you got your whole gear on your back. And I use that bag constantly. That thing has seen thousands and thousands of miles. It's been to Europe with me. It's been across the country a bunch of different times. Mm-hmm. It went to Cuba with me. I mean, it is just an incredible bag. And even 9 years later, after all that continuous use, it still looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And it works perfectly. All the zippers are perfect. Like there is nothing wrong with that bag.
Right.
And to show my love for Think Tank, and because Think Tank, they're such awesome people.
Yeah.
Think Tank and BrooklynPhotoWorks, we are going to be giving away a brand new Streetwalker hard drive bag.
Damn.
That's right.
Giving it away?
That is a $230 bag.
Holy shitballs.
And like I said, mine has lasted me 9 years and it's been around the world.
Wow.
It's been everywhere and it still is going strong. This is one of those bags that every photographer and filmmaker should have in their arsenal because you can literally put a ton of gear in it, have it be safe, have it be comfortable, and even throw your laptop in
I'm
there.
going to say this. Before we started today's podcast, I was admiring your Think Tank over here. I don't remember. Which one is that?
That is the airport security. That's the version 2. I got the version 3 back there. The Navigator is over there. I got the Airport International over there. The Production Manager 40s here. The 50s downstairs.
Oh, fuck. Here's the thing with these Think Tank bags.
Yeah.
If you have
you
a
can't
Pelican,
just have one. They're like potato chips.
Clearly. If with the Pelican cases or like an Anvil case or a Calzone or something. Calzone case. It's very clear that you've got production equipment.
Yeah.
Right? You've got something in there that's probably worth some shit. And if I'm a bad person, I'm probably going to steal that case. The Think Tank bags look like you're rolling your underwear through the airport.
Well, that's an interesting point. Let me just bring up 2 things. Number one, if you guys are looking to buy Think Tank gear, which I strongly recommend that you do, and you want to get a free gift.
Oh.
Because all of their little doodads are really cool. Like their little card readers, their little those little, what do you call those? Those little rubber bandy things.
I don't have a deal with Think Tank. I don't know what the little gifts are.
If you guys are looking to buy Think Tank and you want a free gift, and you go to thinktank.com/Adam.
Come on, you've got your own page on there?
I got my own page.
Jesus.
So when you go to the website, when you check out, you'll be able to choose from a multitude of different items, and you'll be able to choose a free gift. That some of them are like $50 values, these gifts.
So you go on there, you're like, I'm going to buy the Think Tank 40 because Larry was talking about it so much.
Use the code Adam.
Use the code Adam, and then boom, another secret page pops up with free gifts.
Well, what'll happen is this. If you go to thinktank.com/Adam, you do your shopping, you go to your cart.
Yeah.
Once you get to your cart, it'll also, in addition, it'll give you an option to choose a little special thing for yourself at no charge. If you use the code Adam, thinktank.com/Adam, and you will get your free gift. How cool is that?
Damn.
Yeah.
That's cool, bro.
We love that. Yeah.
I like that.
So anyway, so Think Tank is they're sending me a Streetwalker hard drive, which is an amazing bag.
Wow.
And it'll be brandy new, and I will be giving it away. And I'm planting the seed right now because we don't have the full terms of the contest.
Right.
But in the meantime, sign up for the newsletter, subscribe to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel. Follow me on Instagram, and that'll be the start. And then we will post the full rules of this contest subsequently. But we're just getting people excited about it. Yeah,
we're gonna figure out what the thing is because this is a valuable.
Well,
gift.
you know what? It originally started off where Think Tank was going to send us some small stuff, which they're still going to do. We're still going to have other stuff to give away. But then they decided, you know what? We really want somebody to have a really special bag.
We made a lot this year. Give the guy a bag.
I don't know about that part. Yeah, I don't want to make an assumption. But anyway, I do know that we're going to be we'll have this fantastic bag.
I'm in a strange mood today. Have you guessed?
Really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been pushing you today.
Yeah, you are a little nuts.
Yeah.
It could be the moon. But the other thing I also can't go without mentioning is Westcott.
Westcott.
Hello.
Hello. Light him up.
Again, I mean, look at the machine. Look at the
Look at
Milski
this, huh?
and look at us. This is
Look at that light.
the Westcott Flex LED 1x2. That means it's 1 foot by 2 feet. It's an LED matte that this is the Cine kit. So it comes with the frame and the dimmer, and it is absolutely freaking fantastic. I actually had
light.
this light out on location with a battery pack. I brought a battery pack and this light, and I used it to do some portraits on location. And even on location, it looked absolutely fantastic because it's daylight. It's a daylight adjusted light, and the light was gorgeous because it looked so natural, especially in an outdoor setting. So it's not just necessarily something that's specifically meant for doing video. It's not necessarily something that just literally has to live in the house. It's so lightweight, it's portable, and I even used it on location, and I could not be more stoked. fjwestcott.com. Check them out. Awesome stuff. They have a lot of other awesome stuff up there, but I'm just so stoked about this light.
Very cool. I like it.
Yep. And obviously, we could not do this show without the help of Squarespace, guys. Remember, squarespace.com/Adam. Or use the code Adam to get 10% off. So what that means is that you can go to Squarespace, you can check it out for 2 weeks completely free. And then at the end of that 2-week interval, if you decide that, or any time, even that first day.
I don't want this.
Yeah, or if you want it,
I want
it
it
right away.
Bam.
You can't wait 2 weeks. Use the code Adam, ADAM, and that will get you 10% off, which is awesome because who does not love to save money?
I do.
And who doesn't love Squarespace?
I do. I've got 5 Squarespace sites.
Only 5?
Only 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
That's a lot of. That's a commitment there to the website.
That's what I do.
You're all over the internet.
I'm all over the internet.
Yep. MilburnMediaArts.com, RoadieFreeRadio.com, BrooklynPhotoWorks.com. We are all the comms in the house.
And it's all powered through Squarespace.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
All right, guys. That's another episode of The Machine. This is episode 4 wrapped up. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave your questions and comments below, and we'll see you soon.